This was lovely. Hey, Bill, you seem a little low on energy. Let me just cue something up here. You seem a little low on energy in the past few trifecta videos, so I'm not going to ask any questions, but just in case you need a little pep, here's something I did, and I hope it would put a smile on your face, and it certainly did. That put a big smile on my face. And that's from Gary K. And he says, have a great week. Gary from Israel. He said, have I heard anything about the new Stealth Eagle F-15s? Israel's getting a few, and I wonder if we got any intel on them. It's called the Stealth Eagle. It's a significant redesign of the F-15, and it's cost-effective, and I think I'm generally in favor of it. But that's a whole different issue. Anyway, this is an awesome picture. Thank you so much for drawing it, and I'd like to think that someday I can mount that AR-15 on the actual airplane, 2 of them, and that would make me very happy, having the Long Easy with a couple of machine guns, and actually spent some more thought than I should probably own up to on how you could custom make your own air-to-air and air-ground missiles using GoPro cameras and iPads. But I want to get to the heart of the question here. I think what you're picking up, well, first of all, we shoot trifecta in the morning, and usually I just get up and I start scanning the news services and find out what the latest abomination is, and a lot of times I haven't had a chance to even process it. I've come out of these kind of nightmares I was telling you about. First thing I do is wake up and check this stuff. It's like, oh, for God's sake, are you kidding me? And then, next thing you know, I'm in the car, and next thing you know, I'm in the studio. But as I said earlier, it's really starting to affect me a little bit. I'm kind of getting the threats are so great, and the resources are getting very stressed, and everywhere I look, I see real problems, major threats, historical threats. This whole thing about the amygdala response, I'm not going to get into the 2 letters, so nobody gets a drink today, but this idea that the amygdala in your brain is the progressive call it your fear center, but it's actually not. It's the center of your brain that triggers the fear center, and what the amygdala does is it's the threat recognition center. And the classic example is if you are walking down, I've said this 100 times, but this is the kind of point I want to make. If you're walking down a trail and you hear a snap of a twig and a rustle of grass, and the next thing you know, there's a leopard on your back. If you survive the encounter, the next time you're walking down the trail, if you hear the snap of a twig and the rustle of grass, you will not have to go, where did I hear that before? You will automatically know that something bad is going to happen. You're going to turn around, shout, scream, run, whatever you have to do. So this is the ability to recognize threats and activate adrenaline, fight or flight. It's not just fear. It can often be courage. It can be, whatever. And I process so much information, and I see so much of it, and I'm so deep in it that I am seeing real threats everywhere. And I've never been worried about the threats, but some of this new Russian hardware is very good. Their new subs are good. Their Su-37 is maybe better. It's certainly better than the F-35. I say it's far better than the F-18. It might be better than the F-22. I feel like we're losing our military edge rapidly. I feel like the Russians and the Chinese are coming up to our standards rapidly. This ISIL thing and ISIS doesn't particularly concern me overseas, but they're here, and they're going to appear. And part of me is saying these guys are going to be in for a bit of a big surprise here. But they're here, and that's going to have to be dealt with. The debt is out of control. The World Economic System is just a giant game of people coming to the office every day and saying, we still going to agree on this? Yeah, okay. We'll get another day out of it. That's catastrophic failure mode, loss of crew and vehicle kind of failure up ahead of us. And look, this country's always faced problems, and I used to think that things like Nazism and communism were much bigger problems. I still think those were bigger problems, but the thing that really, this is my theme for the night, the thing that worries me the most is again, with the exceptions, we have millennials out there who are in the armed forces now, and these are the most deadly and lethal soldiers we've ever fielded. So once again, I'm talking about the social justice weenies, and this is to some degree the tip of the iceberg that's making the most noise. But even with that said, just in terms of the bell curve of ability, we have these incredible threats facing us, and I do not have a lot of confidence in the upcoming generation's ability to deal with them. And furthermore, there doesn't seem to be anything that is actual genuine progress in terms of what I saw as progress growing up. We were going into space. We're going to, we're 2 people. We're flying 1 person, then 2 people, then 3 people. Then we go to the moon. We go to space station. The future was good, and the future was exciting, and the future was endless possibilities. And now the future's just, like I say, just sitting around thatch huts, burning cow patties and pulling parasites off each other, and eating our sustainable algae cakes, and raising money for the Guatemalan water snake. There's no vision for the country. Bernie says a future we can believe in, which is what? The nursery. He's selling a nursery to infants. It's not a future. And where do you go, right? I mean, this is the first time in history, really, in human history, where people who would take opportunity and freedom above security and dependence, they had some place to go. But we don't have any place to go now. I mean, there's no place on the planet that's unoccupied. And I used to think it was space, but space is a long way downstream in terms of achievability, and I don't know that we're going to get there. It's telling on me, and I just decided I was going to do 2016 as hard as I could. And then on the day after Inauguration Day, I want to get these movies started, because working with people is so much more fun than this, and it's so much more effective and stuff. And but we still have 9 months to get into this thing, and I think I think whatever you think of Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders, I understand that this is good to the degree that the establishment is just completely going to come apart one way or another. But couldn't we do better than those two? And J.J. O'Connell says America's going to return. It's coming, and you have to believe. JT, you're right. If I didn't fundamentally believe it, if I didn't believe we could stop it and save it, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be going through it. If I didn't actually believe it, then I would just, like I said, I'd just go someplace where I didn't have to worry about it and live out the rest of my life, and who cares? Who cares what happens in the future? I don't feel an obligation to the children of this country. I feel an obligation to the ancestors of this country who have sacrificed so much. You just go see The Revenant, by the way. Just go watch The Revenant and just get a sense of what people had to do to make this country happen. Tim Moore says, who wants to set up a colony on Antarctica with Bill? It's funny. If you were going to go someplace to get away from all of these takers, I've given this some thought. One of the things that it would have to be, I think, is it would have to be a place that's really distant and a place that's really cold. It'd have to be a place that'd be very, very hard to get to and cold. The reason I say cold is because cold is natural selection against stupidity and selfishness. You can't be selfish and stupid in a cold environment. You can be one or the other. And that kind of cold selects out against both of them. Those kind of conditions select for intelligence, discipline, planning, and cooperation, voluntary cooperation. There's something about, look, I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. This is my country. I'm going to stay here and defend it. But this business of like Honduras or something, every time I think about, setting up a republic in a jungle someplace, it's just got that Jonestown stink to it. I'm not gonna move the flag to a jungle, and I'm not going to move it someplace. It's the last resort. But as a last resort, I think probably Alaska. One of the things I was thinking about, and we'll wrap it up here, is you could do this completely legally. It would take a major effort, but you could do it absolutely legally. And there was some talk about this with New Hampshire a couple years ago. You could make a nationwide appeal, basically, for those of us who've had enough of this, to move to one state or maybe 2 or 3 adjoining states. Literally put out a call to people saying, listen, let's say Bernie gets elected, and you basically say, listen, if you're one of those people that likes to make things move to Idaho and Wyoming and, maybe someplace a little warmer, but move to this state or these few states, because if you moved a bunch of, if you moved 100, 200,000 politically motivated conservatives, and when I say politically motivated, all I mean is willing to get up and vote to be left alone, then you could turn that state completely. You could own the legislature of that state, and you could own the governorship. And once you had the legal levers of an actual state, let's just take Idaho, which I like very much. Let's just say that we made a call, and we're so sick as a nation that the makers, the conservatives in the country, basically said, enough of this socialism. Everybody says Texas. Texas is too hot for me. Texas will be fine. But just stay with Idaho for the moment, because Texas isn't in any danger right this second, although it's getting bluer. You could just move to Idaho and get out the vote and put enough people there, and you'd have the Idaho legislature, and you'd have the Idaho governorship, and then you would have the legal and constitutional power of the state to start talking about the 10th Amendment. And it's one thing for people to protest, but it's another thing if a state really, really put their heels down. If you had a governor and a legislature and, of course, the population to back you up, that really, really wanted to put your heels down on this and just say this is unconstitutional, we are not going to accept it. We are not going to accept it. We're not going to accept this tax rate because it says here in the Constitution that we're all a part of it. We're just not going to do it. Come and arrest us all. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? And that's actually achievable. And it's not armed militias coming down and taking things. And as somebody pointed out, Cynthia, sorry, it's hard for me to see, Syndril 97 is not going galt. On the contrary, it's saying, look, let's all go to Idaho, and let's just, even though Idaho is part of the United States, obviously it's probably a Freudian slip, and even though we have to pay all these federal taxes and stuff, let's make sure there's no income tax here, and let's just take this one state and let's just pull all of this industry into the state and make all of this money and be conservatives, and this would be the place to go for innovation. Cut the regulations, the state regulations down as much as you possibly can. Plus, it's just beautiful, by the way. It's just gorgeous. And everybody with ambition. It's so just picking Idaho as an example. Idaho would be the new America, and you probably could move millions of people there, and then you could basically at that point, you could make a stand. You could just sue the federal government in the Supreme Court. That's one of the things I liked about Ted Cruz. He sued the federal government on behalf of Texas at the Supreme Court, and he won. Eclipse 2017 says, can we take California? California would be the jewel. If you could take one state, California would be the one. I mean, California is just, in terms of its agricultural and its cities and its, and the climate is just unparalleled. California would be the place to take. Now, the bad news is that California is obviously probably the most liberal state in the nation. It's one of the top 3 or 4. The good news is it wouldn't take but 10 or 15 people with AR-15s to conquer all of California. You wouldn't even have to fire. You just walk around with them slung over your shoulder, and they just bow down at your feet. So something to think about. But I'm talking about legally, completely legally. It's just, the progressives in those states wouldn't like it very much. But my response to that would be, well, welcome to our world. Welcome to our world. If you had Boise is as liberal as any other big city now. But if you put enough people in there to be able to outvote Boise or flip Boise, then the progressives would say, how dare you come in here and destroy our values? It's like, hey, sweetheart, we're just doing to you what you did to this entire country. Tough. If you don't like it, leave. We had to leave. One state would do it. It'd be interesting. And then if you could do it, for 2 or 3 of these low population states, and they're mostly conservative anyway. It's not like you have to flip, Oregon. You could just get 2 or 3 of these governors together and say, all right, now we are going to say, we 3 states are not going to obey this. Come and get us, because we have a National Guard. Is Bernie Sanders going to launch a civil war? No. Are Americans going to stand for watching the federal government go into entire states and, arrest governors because they're saying the Constitution, here's the clause. Here's the clause. So there you go. That's just a thought. The kind of things that give me a little peace of mind sometimes. But yeah, it's a lot going on there, man, and a lot more. Tim Morris, USA says, Burt Rutanistan. I talked about this in the summer. I had not met Dick Rutan at that point. Dick was going to move to Oregon, and Burt wanted him to move to Idaho. And he said, write Dick a letter, see if you can convince him. I actually offered. I said, you want me to have a word with him, Burt? I'd never met him before. I flew with him once, but he never would have remembered me. And he said, yeah, you want to? And I sent this letter. It was hilarious. And I basically said, we need commander for the Republic of Northern Idaho Air Force. And that Air Force is going to consist of whatever fighter jets we can salvage and weaponized Long-Easies. Lots of them. So there you go. Another sip from my fabulous Stratosphere Lounge cup. All right, gangaroos. It's almost 2 hours, a little less than. But those were great questions and really a lot of fun. I think that's going to do it for the night.